Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening for a pastor and a therapist. Tonight, we are going to be talking about overcoming workplace fatigue. I am the therapist, and my name is Dr. Frederica Brooks Davis, and I will allow my partner, the pastor of this duo, to introduce himself.
Good evening, good people. My name is Pastor Byron Benton, the pastor of Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church right here in North Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm the pastor of a pastor and a therapist. Good to be with you tonight.
All right, so you can feel free to drop in the chat, share with us where you are joining us from. If you're on the replay, we're asking you to do the same. And tonight, what we want to first find out is how many of you are experiencing a workplace fatigue? Like, how many of you are tired right now? You've been to work all day, you're going every day, and you are feeling tired. If you are experiencing that, feel free to drop that information in the chat. So, Pastor Byron, when we talk about workplace fatigue, what is that exactly? How do you define that?
Well, one, I define workplace fatigue as something that impacts us physically, spiritually, emotionally. It's feeling exhausted. Um, and that exhaustion, right? You can even sleep and still feel exhausted afterwards. Typically, I dread going to work if I have workplace fatigue, right? And energy is low, and you just feel like you don't have your mojo, right? And you start saying stuff like, I'm overworked and underpaid, and all these types of things. So it's having though that low energy, fatigue, tiredness, headaches, stress is high. But again, simple definition: physical, mental, emotional exhaustion from prolonged work demands.
So, let me ask you this question as a pastor. Have you ever experienced workplace fatigue?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And what's interesting about in the church, sometimes we spiritualize workplace fatigue, right? Because we almost wear it as a banner, as if that's how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be exhausted. You're supposed to pour yourself out like a living drink offering, as Paul said, so to speak, right? And so sometimes we can even applaud workplace exhaustion in an unhealthy way when people actually do need time away. But absolutely, I think that every pastor I know experiences this kind of exhaustion at one point or another, or are experiencing it right now.
Mhm. So basically, if I understand you correctly, it's okay for leaders to experience workplace fatigue, to acknowledge that they do. And is even true in the church. So, pastors or leaders who might be watching us, to say that you're tired and experiencing fatigue in your workplace, in your ministry, it's okay. Like, you're not going to in any way be negatively impacted in the kingdom if you acknowledge that you are tired. Okay.
Yeah.
That is good to know.
Well, what about you as a therapist? I mean, do you ever experience, or have you ever experienced workplace fatigue as a therapist?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think as a therapist in every capacity in which I've worked, I think experiencing fatigue is something that is normal, that we experience, is something that we acknowledge. And to be honest, as a therapist, is something that we try to prepare for. And so, what do I mean by that? So, when you are scheduling clients, right? So as a human being, you know what your schedule might be. You know if you're a morning person or you're an evening person. And so in light of that, how do you schedule your clients throughout the day, right? Is it a situation in which you're experiencing something personally in your life where you are caring for a loved one? You're a therapist, yes, but you also are a human being. And so how you show up, yes, definitely. And we'll talk about ways that we can kind of plan for that. But definitely, I have experienced workplace fatigue, compassion fatigue, which is something totally different. And those of us who, so I guess we could kind of lean into that a little bit. So we talk about workplace fatigue, right? Generally, if we work, those of us who have occupations and we work, be it in the home or outside of the home, that workplace fatigue is real. So we want to acknowledge that, right? How it shows up is different, maybe perhaps based on your respective workplace. But if you are in a job where you are pouring out, so if that's ministry, if you're a teacher, if you're in the healthcare profession, if you are a mental therapist, and you're pouring out and you're talking all day, that in of itself, and you're doing it on the job as well as at home because life happens, it just intensifies or increases the possibility that you will experience workplace fatigue because everywhere in your environment, you're doing the same thing. You're pouring out. What do you think, Pastor?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I've also seen it to where it's spread out throughout an organization and everybody's got workplace fatigue. And the problem with that is when we're fatigued, our productivity is typically low. So we're not, it takes a lot more energy to do a lot fewer tasks, which means we're not getting as much done. And so when we're doing that and multiple people are doing that, then it really gets difficult, right? And again, certain environments are more prone to this than others. So now we've got everybody, the boss is there, all the workers under that boss are there, right? So now the boss is frustrated trying to push the workers, but that boss, him or herself, don't even have it to pour into them, right? And then they're feeling exhausted and frustrated and checking out. There's also this term called actively disengaging, right? Which means I'm present, but I've actually disengaged from the environment, from the work, right? So I'm showing up, but I'm not really giving my full effort. I'm present, but I'm mentally and in a lot of ways emotionally completely absent. I have checked out. So I have actively disengaged. I am active still within the job environment, but I have disengaged from being as effective and impactful as I could. And so this affects morale, right? It also then can introduce safety issues because we're not as cautious, and depending on the functionality of your job and what you actually have to do, there may be certain things that when you don't cross that T or dot that I, it can jeopardize people's lives or even your safety. So I think what you said, Dr. Frederica, is true. I think also it can be exacerbated when there is a environmental dynamic to where we all are experiencing some sort of workplace fatigue.
So I think the other piece about workplace fatigue, what are some reasons why? So, some of that could be on your job. You're not doing just your job, you're doing your job and someone else's job. And so if you are a supervisor and you have employees, but you have employees who call out habitually, someone has to cover that shift. I remember my mom was a head nurse at a hospital back home, and growing up, she might have worked 11 to 7. But if her nurse called out and she had to cover a shift, she was then working 11 to 7. And so that's, for healthcare workers, shift workers, that is yet another responsibility that you have that can create the possibility of you having fatigue based on, like Pastor Byron said, the nature of your job. That could also be workplace fatigue when it comes to, I think, serving in ministry. If you are a pastor or a leader, and you are the only pastor, that could certainly be workplace fatigue from the vantage point that you're constantly in the pulpit. And if you have a season where you're also eulogizing members of your church and community, that can also create some workplace fatigue. The other thing I would say is boundaries, right? On our job, what are some of the things that contribute to having workplace fatigue? One of those being not maintaining boundaries around your work. And what does that look like? That is teamwork and how we define teamwork. Everybody pulls his or her own weight, if you will. But when you have situations in which you're enabling persons who are not pulling their weight and you're taking on their task as well as your own, it can breed workplace fatigue, but also resentment, right? Frustration, lack of motivation, not encouraged or excited about going to work. You're dreading the one thing that you used to enjoy doing. Any other ways in which we might experience or causes for workplace fatigue, Pastor Byron?
Yeah, I would say bad theology.
Mm.
Again, if we glorify unhealthy levels of engagement and then we affirm that and we just exhaust people, right? So it has me now, I'm chasing after this thing because I believe that I will please God if I work myself to exhaustion, right?
Mm.
And now I feel guilty if I actually implement some of the things that you just said, healthy boundaries, being able to take the breaks, etc. Right. So now I'm in this lose-lose, right? If I do what is healthy, I feel guilty. So now I'm not recovering like I should because I feel somehow I'm not hitting the mark. I'm missing where I'm supposed to be, right? But then if I do work myself to a place of overextension and exhaustion, eventually I'm going to collapse. I'm going to get there. So I think that theology can play a significant role in this behavior and within the culture of the organization. One other thing I would like to say is underfunding, right? Sometimes the powers that be within the organization, whether it's the board of the nonprofit or whether it's the CEO, etc., right? I love the show Undercover Boss. What I love about Undercover Boss is a lot of times there are people where it's their company. They remember working it from the ground up. They remember doing the old jobs, etc. But they've been the CEO in executive leadership for so long that they are completely disconnected from what it actually takes to do those jobs or what the people's lives are like who are doing those jobs. And so what do we see at every episode of Undercover Boss? Next thing you know, CEOs are crying. It's, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was like this here. And we're going to make these changes and we're going to make those changes. So it's very common, whether it's in the church or in a nonprofit or in a for-profit business, for the people who are making the decisions to be very disconnected from a lot of the positions and what the work actually requires. Or they remember when they were doing it 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, but the job has really shifted. It has evolved. And they don't understand what that really takes at this point or what support is needed. So sometimes I think it's leadership being not really being understanding or connected about what support is needed to prevent the exhaustion to happen. What do you think about those?
Yeah, so I definitely think that's true. I equally think that there are instances where we have this victim mentality, which is that we perpetuate. So you have like the one that you said, where we have leaders who maybe they built their organization from the ground up and they're removed. But then we also have leaders who feel like I had to hustle, even though it was unhealthy for me. I want you to hustle just like I did. I can't make it easier for you because you need to be on the struggle bus too. And so that in and of itself is this mentality around victimization and just, okay, because I experienced it, you need to experience it too, as opposed to saying, how can I make this journey lighter for persons? Because I know I didn't want to work 12-hour days, 18-hour days. So how can I make it lighter for my staff? How can I change that? And so to your point, oftentimes what happens is titles change, but our mentality, our thoughts around the job, around what we're doing, how do we work smarter, not harder, it doesn't change just because my title changed. And so you've created this perpetual. I'd shared in another podcast some time ago how the Lord really was working with me around time, and just how much I can get caught up in the day-to-day. Time is gone, and in my mind I'm like, oh, I'm really tired, I need to go to bed. But instead I'm like, let me just get this one thing done, and one thing turns into four things, and it's 2-3 o'clock in the morning, which is not healthy. And so in that time, several years ago, the Lord was like, well, you need to model this for your staff. And so in that, it was the creation of, from 12 to 12:30, the conference room is available for you to come, but that's 30 minutes that we unplug. You don't do any work. We're not talking about work. We're talking about us. If you want to go out and take a walk, take a walk. If you want to take a nap in your office. But it was just a culture. We had begun this culture where it was extremely healthy. So now, I mean, 11:59, you hear people taking their keys, they logging off, everything, because they wanted to come to this conference room to gather. And it was really powerful. And I hope those persons are continuing that practice, but we just need to unplug. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very well said. And I like the way you're framing it, right? Because when people think of unplugging, a lot of times they think of vacation, sabbatical, but you're talking about, hey, on a daily, right? There are studies that show how important sometimes just taking a nap is. And, we talked a little bit about this offline, about how culturally, right, America, we have a factory mentality. Everything was built, right, when we were coming up in the Industrial Revolution, so that everything mirrors that. Even our school systems really have still the warehouse factory mentality. With that said, we don't have siestas here, right? Where in some countries it is normal to have a full out serious break in the day where there's no working going on right now. Here we have to have it in our employee workbooks. And sometimes you may have to hold your manager accountable that I'm supposed to get a 15-minute break because I got these many hours, and then I'm supposed to get a 30-minute break, right? And even with then, you feel kind of rushed, as if, this is not something that you need. It's just something that you got to have because you need some food or something. Like even that's more about nourishing the body instead of nourishing the soul, and finding a place of relaxation, plug in, etc., being able to really take your mind off of things. So I think that's very well said. Like we need sometimes, not even sometimes, it really should be a part of within our daily schedule to break. But I don't plan that well. I don't do that, right? We kind of fit a break in where it's almost like a break is a blessing. It's like, oh, look, the Lord done blessed me today. Somebody done canceled, or this meeting got shifted, or this person didn't show up. So now I have a break. Instead of, no, actually, the break needs to be scheduled just like the meetings are. And it's a static part. And again, I'll be the first one to confess, I don't do this well at all. I'm pushed. And that actually adds one more thing that I would say is a watch out, that we have a lack of accountability within our organizations and systems on this. We have a lack of accountability with people, right? So some people just check out. They ain't doing what they supposed to do. They ain't been doing what they supposed to do. And they just going on about their business and dare you to say something about it, right? And then typically you have somebody else who is then making up for that, because they're wired to where it's like, if there's something that needs fixing and I can do it, I'm going to do it. And that person gets exhausted, and then they may get angry and frustrated at the other person, but there's not a system of accountability, right? And if the culture has been to not have accountability, and you begin trying to introduce accountability, sometimes people look at you like you the wrong one. It's like, what you doing all what you doing? It's like, I'm trying to hold you accountable because this ain't my responsibility. It is your responsibility, but it impacts me. Go ahead.
Or is it, when you say, is it that I'm trying to hold you accountable, or is it that I'm holding myself accountable and I'm creating healthy boundaries? So I'm not doing your work. So it's not, I'm not trying to put any shine on you. I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just trying to do my job, what I'm supposed to do. And so in doing that, if you are a part of that, if you're assisting with that, it's really not, I'm trying to do something to you. as much as it is I'm trying to ensure I maintain healthy boundaries.
You better reframe that thing, therapist. You better reframe it and put, right? See the language, and that's so powerful, right? Because even the way I said it, right, put way more ownership on me. It's not mine to own. What's mine to own is me. But now, even in the way I'm languaging it, right, it still can produce that guilt, those feelings of shame, etc., and it allows other people to put it on you, right? Because again, they're saying, no, I don't want to do this. If you were, blah, 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 if you were all that, you could do this. No, it's like, no, I'm here. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Jesus washing feet, right? So, so Jesus was going to wash the disciples' feet. Peter was like, in the Byron translation, no, don't wash my feet. I'm not worthy, blah, 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 blah. And then Jesus asserts that, no, he's washing feet. And then Peter goes to the other stream, well, wash all of me, Jesus. And Jesus is like, Peter, listen, bro, feet. That's it. Like, I'm washing feet. I'm going to wash your feet. I'm not washing anything else. I came here to wash feet. And so he corrects Peter, because Peter went from, I don't want you to do anything, to now I want you to do more than what you said you're going to do. And Jesus keeps it in the pocket and says, no, what I am going to do and what I need you to buy in, Peter, into is foot washing. That's the nature of this beast.
Mm-hmm. That's good there. So what would you say are some reasons? What are some reasons in which we tend to not maintain those boundaries? What are some reasons we continue, would you say spiritually or from a pastoral perspective, what are some reasons that we will allow the gray area to linger there and we take on more than we need to?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's a drip, drip, drip. And what I mean by that is we look at something situational and we just say, okay, I just need to get through this. I just need to take this on right now. And once I get through this, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then there's something else and we do it again. And then there's something else and we do it again. Right. And so I think sometimes we're not being honest with ourselves. We're not being honest with ourselves. We're giving ourselves an out because we're saying this is a one-time thing, or this is a one-off, or I just need to suck it up to get through this. But there's always something else that shows up. So I think that's one of the issues. I think, again, another issue is going back to our spiritual wall, that we're not really centered in God, right? But think about one of the Psalms that we love the most. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still water. Boy, we'll recite that thing in a heartbeat, but won't follow God when he tries to take us to them places. God's like, oh, I'm trying to lead you beside still waters. I'm trying to lay your butt down in green pastures. Like, hold on, but I got this thing I need to do, right? So we're not really centering. Like, it's funny. Think about it. I hear people tell me all the time, the Lord told them to do this. 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 Go here. Blah, blah. I very rarely ever hear anybody say, the Lord told me to rest. The Lord told me to lay down. The Lord told me to go to the beach. The Lord told me to go to the mountains and seek him for 30 days. The Lord told, right? Very rarely in church, my entire life, have I ever heard anybody say the Lord led them that way? Usually it is the Lord is leading me to do something that is not about still waters and green pastures. So I would say centering on God and allowing God and our ears to really be inclined to God is important. When we get busy, right, and we're distracted, our ears are to a lot of other voices, but not to the voice of God. So those are two things that I would highlight here out of the gate that are the watch outs that keep us from doing it. This the dribble or drip or drift away, where there's always something, and before we know it, we're way further away from shore than we realize because it was just subtle and very slow moving. And then it's not really having a centered relationship with the Lord so that the Lord can catch us, tell us about ourselves, and send us to a place of preparation, consecration, rest, etc., before things get out of hand. Those are a couple things. What say ye, good doctor?
So I certainly agree with what you've lifted. I think also culturally, right? We are all taught, depending upon our respective culture, what it looks like and how we define being a man, how we define being a woman, how we define being a head of household and what's expected. And just, when we look at this whole superwoman syndrome as it pertains to Black women, oftentimes the narrative is that we are supposed to be busy. That's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to always be doing something. And if you aren't, then in fact, you're lazy. And then I think the converse is true for men in that oftentimes our narrative is that our men are not doing enough. And so what happens oftentimes is our men then overcompensate because they're trying to get a stamp of approval that they're doing enough, when the reality is nothing is ever going to be enough for those persons who feed you that narrative. So I think part of it is cultural. I think the other part of it is just our humanness, in that we want to feel connected, like who we are and how we identify, that I need to be able to wear as a badge of honor, I'm tired. And I'm listing the 25 reasons that I'm tired. When in all actuality, we aren't necessarily taught or encouraged, and this isn't everyone, but generally, how many parents actually teach and model for their children self-care? So how many parents say a way in which you show you love yourself and you love God and you're taking care of your temple is for you to take a break? Is that something that we teach, be it at school, be it at home? Those messages, I don't think we often are taught. And so we believe that we have to be on this hamster's wheel, as opposed to the reality is, if I take more time to rest, I'll be more productive. It's this counter narrative versus believing that if I exhaust myself, if I stay up late, I'll get more work done. So tomorrow, I won't have to work as hard. The reality is 7 days have gone by. You've worked as hard every day, and your to-do list still has 20 items on it. So again, I think it's our choosing to say to ourselves that I'm going to choose to take care of me. And part of taking care of me is mind, body, spirit, and that I have to take a look at my job and see how can I work smarter, not harder. And I will say this can be difficult to do at times when you have taken on the responsibilities of others on your job. Sometimes when we're juggling those balls in the air, we have to let those balls fall. And that can be difficult. But sometimes we have to, because think about it, even on the job, we're talking about overcoming workplace fatigue. If we are constantly overextending ourselves, who's going to stop and say, oh, okay, Frederica, you working too hard. Stop doing that. When they have a goal or an objective they're trying to reach. Some people will say, you know what, take your rest, but not often, because oftentimes your boss is working just as hard. Sometimes they're not, though. Sometimes you're working harder than your boss, but then other times your boss is working just as hard as you. And because they have a poor work ethic around that, you are in that system and you've absorbed in that, and that becomes your workplace culture.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that we're finding out more and more, you brought up kids, is that we need time to play. Kids need free play, and adults need free play too. Mm-hmm. An interesting statement was made by Cam Newton, the former quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. They were talking about, this was on his podcast, and they were talking about kids and how now kids focus on a particular sport like AAU basketball, and they're in basketball year round. And then they have these trainers that are training them specifically to work on their speed and this and that. And what Cam Newton argued, and they're seeing that what's happening is these kids are exhausted mentally by the time they're in college and professional, and they're tapping out. They're leaving the sport. They're disengaging. And he said he believes part of the issue is they're too focused too early. He said, when we were growing up, he said, we did not have a trainer for speed. We ran track during track season. You played the different sports, even though that wasn't your primary sport, and it actually helped you in the other areas. He said he feels that it's actually to the detriment of these kids that they're so focused and just in one area at such a young age. And I think that the same is true of us as adults, right? When we're younger, we have more extracurriculars. We're engaged in this and over there. We have free play, right? I remember when I was a kid, the number one thing for me to do was, Byron, go outside and play. That was just it. Go outside and play. That was it. That, like, there were no other instructions other than that. There was not, here's what you're going to do when you get out there. There was like, it was like, just go outside and play. And you can't be coming in and out of the house. You either stay out or you stay in. So you just got to stay out, drink out of the water hose and all that kind of stuff. You want something to drink. I digress. But my point is, as adults, right, we become way more focused. And we're doing things in routine, and we're grinding and grinding and grinding. Do you have hobby free play type space where in an adult level of kind of way of things, you're able to just go outside and play? I think that that's another problem that we have, Dr. Frederica. And again, and even as an adult, we look at that as childlike behavior. It's like, I don't have to, like, what do you mean? Go outside and play. Like, I got too much work to do to go outside and play. I tell you one thing I'll say about this. My kids, there are a number of things that we do that is just fun. We have laser tag, and we'll go around the house driving folk nuts at night. But man, we have a ball. I got these Nerf guns, and we'll have serious battles again, driving folk crazy. But you know what I have found out? I enjoy it, I think, as much as they enjoy it, because I'm just having fun with them and they're having fun and we're just playing. I really think no matter how old we are, we just want to have some fun time and just be able to play freely.
We had a question come in. What if a person is experiencing fatigue from pushing themselves to work harder because they believe they have greater significance when they do? That is an excellent question, and thank you for that. So what I will say, one, is there is a book, I don't get any residuals or anything from it, but it's called Search for Significance. And what I like about this book is it deals with this very issue of where do we see and define our significance. And to your point, oftentimes, be it culture, your family of origin, your faith community, your circle of influence, oftentimes it's modeled based on what we see. So the question would be, have I seen it modeled that in order to be significant, in order to have value, we work as hard? I would also say that oftentimes our culture and community reinforces this. So the willing workers at church, or you have these groups where you get an award, and what do people often say? This is the hardest working person. So oftentimes when we look at merit-based, ideally it's merit-based, but is it that persons who stay late, come early, they get rewarded and others do not? And so if I'm seeking to find my significance based on my view and how other persons view me as an employee, then oftentimes I might be working overtime trying to prove myself who I am to someone else. But the question is, am I really, who matters, right? When we talk about significance, right? Does it matter most if I'm a believer that God sees me using my time wisely, which means that I'm spending time in devotion, It means I'm taking time to care for my temple. It means that I'm taking time to care for others. It also means that I'm taking time to complete the task ahead of me. And so, if I'm searching for or I'm seeking significance in God, if I'm living my life in a way that I really want God to say that I was good and I was a faithful servant, then if that's my significance, I need to look at how am I living my life and does it align itself with how God is going to then say, um, say that I served in the way that I needed to do. And I would say to the person who is experiencing fatigue because they find their significance in their job and what they're doing and overextending themselves, then I think it's time to kind of pull back and say, maybe I need to, one, be prayerful, but also maybe speak with someone who can help me see the things about myself that I don't see, the things that are healthy, the things that are true, and face the reality that you'll work yourself to where you could become sick physically, mentally, spiritually. You have a drought. Physically, you're sick, and you can't serve anybody in that capacity. And there's no significance in that. What do you say, Pastor Byron?
Yeah, one I've done that before, and do not recommend. 0 stars. What I would say too, in addition to that, is we're not saying don't work hard, right?
That's right.
We work hard. I work hard, but I had to learn there's a difference between working hard and being defined by working hard, or my significance being tied, my sense of self, to working hard. Those are two different things. And there's a difference between working hard and productivity. You can be working hard and not be as productive. I'll give you an example because I had to learn this. I used to stay up late, one, because I was younger and I could, working long. But I reached this point where really there's not much productivity. And now I'm exhausted and I'm not as productive the next morning, next day. What I found out was if I just realize I have reached my limit and I stop and I go and watch my Star Wars or anime or something, go work out, etc. When I come back, I get done in way less amount of time than it would have taken me if I would have continued to just kind of spin the wheels. I remember in grad school reaching a point where I'm reading the same line and I'm so exhausted that I read it over and over and over. It 30 minutes done passed and you're on half a page because you're so tired and trying to push through it. You need to take your butt to bed and go to sleep because you're getting nothing accomplished at this point. Now, are you working hard? Absolutely. You're working your butt off, but you are not productive at all. The quality of work will not be where it is. And so I think it's important to define what it means to work hard, right? And that working hard is inclusive of self-care, because self-care is what enables you to not only work hard, but have high productivity, right? High efficiency. Things like this, I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger that I don't remember. Maybe I was told, but I was too hard-headed to listen. I don't know. What I do know is I had to learn this over time and allowing myself to take those breaks. And so again, our significance can't be tied up in it, right? Our work is unto the Lord. This goes back to a major spiritual principle. If my work is unto the Lord, then God cares about the way I'm working, right? Because you can get to the same place, different avenues in different ways. And God cares about the way we're getting there. God cares about the steps we're taking to get there, right? You can beg, borrow, cheat, and steal to get to a place. But I would say that's not in line with how God would have us to do it. And we're not going to be healthy when we get there. Or we can do it God's way, which has this balance, has an element of faith, right? And dependency on God, but also I'm seeking to please God, and my worth and value is tied to who I am in God, right? Which sometimes puts me in conflict with people, right? Because inevitably there are going to be times where I'm pleasing the Lord, but I'm displeasing people. And Jesus warns us about that. Like Jesus tells us, look, they're going to reject you. They're not going to accept you, etc. Because here's something else, Dr. Frederica, that I've seen happen in work environments. When it has is a low productivity environment, and you come in with high productivity, which exposes these dynamics, they want you to cut that out. I need you to stop that. You're doing way less. You're doing way more.
You're doing too much. You're doing too much.
Doing too much. We don't do that around here. Right? You try to work on to the Lord, please the Lord. You doing what you know to do. It ain't even all that at the end of the day. You're not going above and beyond, right? You're just doing what you know the Lord has called you to do and being efficient at it. And don't dare bring up some suggestions about how we can do this better. Oh Lord, crucify her.
So for those who are just joining us tonight, we're talking about workplace fatigue and overcoming workplace fatigue. And so I do want us, before we end, to provide some strategies, right? If you find yourself experiencing workplace fatigue. Now, that's a little different than what we're talking about tonight. It's a little different than you tired, right? You worked a day, you had a long weekend, and you're tired. That's going to happen. Workplace fatigue is more or less when you find yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, you're exhausted. You don't want to go to work. You're finding it difficult to accomplish your task. What are some things that you can do? So one is you could create, I talked earlier about unplugging 12, 30, whatever your time may be, that in the course of your day, you are making a conscious decision to schedule time for yourself. It might have to coincide with your lunch break. Perhaps consider eating outside of, not at your desk. Now, that's a great thing to do. Like, leave your office. If you're in a situation where your work environment is not healthy for you, take a lunch break. Go sit in your car. Go walk and sit at a park nearby. If you have enough time on your lunch break, go around the corner. Take a walk. It will just do you justice to remove yourself. Also consider maybe in the morning you're going to get up and work out. Take a walk. It's amazing what physical activity can do to generate your mind, your body, your spirit, your time of devotion. If you're someone who you physically cannot work out now, there are plenty of chair exercises, creative things that you can do. Another thing you can do is journal, right? So when you find yourself fatigued and tired, pull out a journal. Maybe in the morning, you want to write down what you're thankful for in the morning. And then at night, what you're thankful for. I mean, we all have hard days where we've been in meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. But you know what? There's nothing better than also to think about before you go to bed, that we kind of counter that thought about all the stuff that we did, all the stuff that went wrong, with what do we do right? Like, we're going to celebrate today. I decided to eat outside, out away from my office. I decided to get up and work out for 30 minutes. I decided that I'm going to have a good day, right? So it's kind of like deciding on purpose, starting your day in purpose to say, I know that I'm tired. I know I'm tired of going to this job, but I thank God I have a job, particularly in this current climate where so many people are unemployed. I was at a store over the weekend, last weekend, out of town, and one of the workers was talking about, she was talking about how tired she was at work and I got to come to work tomorrow. And I said to her, well, thank God you have a job. And she was just like, yeah, I know, but I've been here for 19 years. Well, yeah, you don't know, because tomorrow, if you don't have a job, what you gonna do? Like, it's so I think it's also about perspective. How do I make this work? And then learning to say no for real. Like even in you're talking with your employees, your employer, excuse me. So if you're on your job and you find that you have not maintained healthy boundaries and you're doing your job and other people's job, then bring it up to your boss in a respectful manner and say, hey, I just want to have a conversation. I am finding that I feel as though I'm doing more than just my job. And so I need some help from you as my supervisor to help me in that. What do you recommend? How can we make this burden lighter? What can we do? And they may, not respond, or they may deny. But I think also you have some decisions to make, right? Around what does that look like? Because trust and believe, if something were to happen to you, God forbid, on the job, somebody else will be in that job. So I think also we just have to, sometimes we find not just our significance, but our identity and our value in our work. And we believe that the job won't go on if we're not there. Yes, it will. It may not be how you did things, but the job will go on. Trust and believe. No one is above reproach. So, Pastor Byron, what are you thinking
the sun's still gonna rise?
Oh, it's gonna rise.
Still gonna go on.
Oh, it's gonna go on, and we want it to.
The whole organization ain't just gonna collapse because I ain't do somebody else's job.
It sure isn't. And if you're a founder of an organization and you started it and you did things right, it will continue to go on even if you're not here, even if you founded it.
Whew. I love it. So something that I would add is nutrition. Mm-hmm. What you eat impacts significantly how you feel, how your brain is functioning. I recognize this. I went, I went on vacation, Dr. Frederica, for July. And so I also relaxed on all dietary stuff. I was eating sweets galore. I mean, I was having a field day. I was like Scrooge McDuck, money being except donuts and cupcakes and everything else. And that was supposed to be July. But then July turned into August and I was still way out of pocket. So I had to make a hard decision. And the hard decision I made was I'm going to cold turkey. I need to consecrate before the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not doing this for health reasons. I'm doing this for spiritual reasons that will then have health benefits as a result. So I'm on day 21, I think it is. And when I tell you my body feels better, I have mental and spiritual clarity. This consecration has been phenomenal for me. And I'm no longer really craving, I'm not craving the sugar and stuff. And I forgot, that there are good things out there that I can do that kind of help me when I have a craving for something sweet. I mean, this thing is just going, but again, it's nutrition, right? I also got discipline again. It's like, all right, after 8:00 at night, no eaty, because that weighs me down. It makes me feel groggy. It's just not good on my system. Maybe other people, you don't have that problem, but I've had that problem. I think after about 35, it's like, you don't need to be eating late no more. So nutrition is very, very important. I would also say, think about impact over busyness, right? Mm-hmm. Impact over busyness. Look at the impact that you're having by the work you're doing, not just by the busyness that you're engaging in. And again, it's the whole Mary and Martha dynamic, right? Where Jesus prioritizes us sitting at his feet, because it's after sitting at Jesus' feet that then we know what to do to make the biggest impact when it's time for us to do the work, right? And it's time for us to do the mission. So impact. Like at the end of the day, if all this busyness is not really having an impact, what good is the busyness, right? Like at the end, I don't want to talk about nobody, but let me just talk about some of the stuff I see, right? If you go to the gym, but you just on your phone walking around the whole time. I mean, you went to the gym and you were busy and you lifted a little bit and you walked on the treadmill for a second or two. And then you socialized and that kind of stuff. You were busy, but you did not do anything that's going to have a significant impact on your physical well-being, right? as you would have. You could go in, and I think I've heard a number of trainers say this, that it is better if you can just work out for 20 minutes consistently. That will impact your body far greater than people who are inconsistent, but they work out an hour every time they work out. So 20 minutes consistently is better for your body than an hour workout inconsistently. The same is true with devotion. Don't you get caught up? I don't have enough time to read the Bible like I want to. Well, do you have 3 minutes to read a couple scriptures and meditate? Because that 3 minutes consistently will be greater than that 1 hour that you give inconsistently. It will impact you. We've had this push-up challenge going on at our church, 30 for 30. And that's one of the biggest revelations that I keep hearing. It's like, man, I didn't realize how much just a minute every day could make me stronger, could change my physique. All things like that. It's just 1 minute. That's all I'm spending. 1 minute doing 30 push-ups. It is over. And look at all the benefits from it. So that's the difference between impact versus busyness. Think about, how can I truncate this thing down to where I can be consistent, but because of consistency, I'm going to see much greater impact, right? You may not be able to change your whole diet right now, but just cut the sugar out, right? And see the impact. One of the prayers that I love is the Serenity Prayer, because also it's about realizing what is in my power to change and what is not. Right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it to be. Ooh, Lord, that right there preached by itself. I'm living in the world as it is and not as I would have it to be. Trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to God's will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and ever in the next, right? So it's this idea of, Lord, help me discern, what do I have the power to do something about, and what ain't in my power? What's not my ship to run? What's not my grass to cut, right? What am I supposed to deal with? And then that beautiful scripture that says, be anxious for nothing, but in all things with thanksgiving, right? This idea of gratitude impacts your brain. Gratitude, as Dr. Frederica was saying, I have to echo it, just beginning to be thankful and focusing on what the Lord has blessed you with. Did he wake you up this morning? Do you have reasonable portion of strength, right? Do you have money to put food on the table? Like beginning to focus on everything that you have in your life to be grateful for. And that will help shift your attitude, because sometimes it's how we're engaging with things. It's just like, it's not the thing itself, it's how we're engaging it. It's the attitude. And so it's just adding up and piling on, especially if you're in an environment where folk are negative and nasty. Amen and hallelujah. One other thing I would say is delegate and collaborate. Avoid taking on every task yourself. And here it is. And I'm going to be a part of the testimony. God, deliver me and help me. Ask for help. It is not a sin to ask for help. I need your help. Somebody need to say that with me right now. I need you to practice it. I need you to practice it. Just take a deep breath. Say to one breath, I need your help. Don't be one of those folk up here like, well, don't they see I need help and they're going to proact? No, they will watch you pass out. They will watch you pass out. Like you gotta, it's pride. Ask for help. Will you help me bring in the groceries? Will you do this for me? Can you do this? Can you assist me in this kind of way? Ask for help. I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to somebody else out there. Ask for help. And I'll leave it right there. Well, I got to say one more piece. Again,
he been saying one more piece for the last 10 minutes.
I'm sorry.
that preacher.
Hold on. Let me get the third point in. My third. No, the only thing I was going to say is, in the very beginning of the Bible, when everything was created that is, rest was a part of it. That's how important it is. That even God's self demonstrates to us that It is godly to incorporate rest because there was even a rest day in the formation of everything that is by the one who need not slumber nor sleep. That's all I was going to say. That's my last point. I'm done. I'm quiet. To the therapist.
No, so that was all good. I mean, the reality of it all is in the event you are just joining us or you watching the replay, what is our overarching message about overcoming workplace fatigue? One is we want you to know if you're experiencing it, it is not that it isn't a common thing that people experience, but it is not something that we want you to take on, embrace, and continue to work in it and believe that you cannot be at a place that's much healthier. So we've provided you with some tools and some suggestions on how to address workplace fatigue. I think finally, if you have hours for vacation, there are plenty of people who will store up leave and they never take it. Like it's something will happen. The job won't go on if you take a vacation. If you have vacation hours, take a day, take a mental health day. It is okay if you take a mental health day. And sometimes we just need to hear that it's okay for us to take a pause. So we will continue talking about the things that we have some other things that we want to talk about starting next month, God willing. We will be back with you. The Lord says the same. It is the second and fourth Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We started a little late tonight, but things happen in our lives as we're trying to get home after work. So thank you for joining us tonight. Feel free to share with those of your friends and family members who may be experiencing workplace fatigue and be a blessing. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to A Pastor and a Therapist podcast. Until next time, we wish you well. Godspeed. Good night.
Good night. Peace be with you.